So for this video, I'm going to be making a lore build for every single movie in the Friday the 13th franchise. Everything from the very first movie in the franchise, which doesn't really have Jason in it, but we're going to make a build for it anyway, all the way to the remake of Friday the 13th. And I usually have two rules for these videos. One, I'm not allowed to use any duplicate perks, and two, I am not allowed to use that character's teachable perks. But for this video, we're going to be dropping the duplicate perks rule just to make it a little bit easier for myself to make the most accurate build possible for all of these movies. And there's also a lot of movies in this franchise, and it's very hard not to do repeat perks. So yeah, I don't know how I pulled it off for the Halloween franchise, but somehow I did. Before we get into the builds, I just want to thank you guys so much for 9,000 subscribers. I never thought that I would actually get there. I thought at most I'd get 5,000 and just be done right there. But no, 9,000 people have said, hey, you're a pretty cool guy, I'm gonna subscribe. So thank you guys very, very much. But speaking of which, I'm trying to hit 10,000 subscribers before Halloween the game comes out. So if you are not subscribed quite yet and you would like to help me get there, then please do so. Our first build comes from the very first movie in the franchise, Friday the 13th from 1980, and the build is as followed. Whispers, Hex Plaything, Hex Retribution, and Spirit Fury. But for the perks, I chose Whispers and Plaything because in this movie, Jason apparently was speaking to Pamela from his watery grave, telling her to kill everybody at Camp Crystal Lake for allowing him to die all those years ago, and to prevent the camp from opening altogether and allowing another mother to suffer just as much as Mrs. Voorhees did.
Kill her, Mommy. Kill her. Don't let her live. I won't, Jason. I won't.
And Hex Retribution and Spirit Fury were chosen to represent the burning rage that both Pamela and seemingly the ghost of Jason had for the Christie family and all the employees at Camp Crystal Lake. And for the add-ons, there's no add-ons in Jason kit that comes directly from the very first movie, so I just chose the 2 nails and the orderly's shoes. I chose the 2 nails to represent one kill from this movie where Pamela had pinned a man onto a wall with a bunch of arrows, and also the orderly's shoes to also represent her job as the cook at Camp Crystal Lake when Jason died back in 1957. For our next perk, we have Friday the 13th Part 2, one of my favorite movies in the entire franchise, and the build is Territorial Imperative, Sloppy Butcher, Dark Devotion, and Scourge Hook Monstrous Shrine. Territorial Imperative was chosen because Jason is very protective of his home turf. Anybody who sets foot in Crystal Lake is going to suffer a very painful death, and Sloppy Butcher represents the fact that Jason was not as formidable as he's going to be in the rest of this franchise. He gets thwarted by Ginny multiple times in this movie, and even struggled in a wrestling match to Paul somehow. Dark Devotion and Monstrous Shrine comes from a certain part in the movie where Ginny says this.
And you know, the only person it ever known was his mother. I mean, she was everything to him. He must have seen the whole thing happen. He must have seen his mother get killed, and all just because she loved him. And he must be out there right now crying for a return, for resurrection.
For the add-ons, I chose the bent wheel because it is an Easter egg to one of the most iconic kills in the entire franchise, the Mark kill. And I also chose the Deputy's Badge because sometime in this movie, a sheriff's deputy goes to investigate Jason's shack and is punished for trespassing in Jason's territory. Our next build comes from Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D, and for the perks I chose Trail of Torment, Remember Me, Save the Best for Last, and Fearmonger. The reason I chose Save the Best for Last and Remember Me is because Chris is one of the few people in the Friday franchise who has encountered Jason multiple times and lived to tell the tale. And either by chance or by design, Jason leaves her as the sole survivor to traumatize her once again. Trail of Torment was chosen to play into the parts where Chris is running away from Jason, and everywhere she goes, she finds one of her dead friends. And each one of these encounters traumatizes her so much it leads into our next perk, Mindbreaker. After everything that Chris went through in this movie, everything from her multiple encounters with Jason, all of her dead friends, and the multiple jump scares she experienced in this movie, all this leads to her mind eventually just breaking. And for the add-ons, there are 4 different add-ons that represent something from this movie. You have the Bloody Magazine, the Burnt Fuse, the Eye Goop, as well as the Knitting Needle. Next up, we have Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter, which turns out was not actually the final chapter. But for the perks, we have Rapid Brutality, Brutal Strength, Forever Entwined, and Coup de Grace. Rapid and brutal were chosen because Jason was very athletic in this movie. He was looking like prime-time Ray Lewis, sprinting after people, bursting through doors, all that stuff. We also have Forever Entwined to represent the rivalry that started in this movie with Tommy Jarvis, which also leads into our final perk, Coup de Grace, because Tommy is the only person in the entire franchise that has actually put Jason in the grave once and for all, until he just accidentally resurrects him in Part 6. Much like Part 3, there are a couple add-ons in Jason kit that comes directly from this movie, such as the missing corkscrew, the 2 nails, the coroner's coffee, the garden claw, and the orderly's shoe. I personally chose the missing corkscrew and the 2 nails. Next up we have Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning, and yes, I know, this movie does not technically have Jason, but there is a dream version of Jason and also Roy Burns filling in as Jason, so I chose 2 perks for each of them. For Dream Jason, I chose Remember Me and Phantom Fear, and for Roy Burns, I chose Superior Anatomy and A Nurse's Calling. For Dream Jason, the reason I chose Phantom Fear and Remember Me is because multiple times in this movie, Tommy Jarvis has these hallucinations where he thinks he sees Jason stalking him or coming back to life, but it turns out it was just all in his head. And for Roy Burns, I chose A Nurse's Calling and Superior Anatomy because 1, he's a paramedic, so he's involved with the hospital stuff, hence A Nurse's Calling, and also, for some reason, Roy Burns is just a monster in this movie. He does not look like a human being whatsoever. He is pulling off feats that no human should be able to pull off. Once again, Jason doesn't have any add-ons that come directly from this movie, so you can pretty much choose whatever you want. If you want to, you can choose the eye goop to represent the kill where Roy put a belt around somebody's eyes and cranked it so tight it crushed their skull, and also the 2 nails to represent the bed of nails that Roy fell on at the very end of the movie that ended up killing him. Next up, we have my favorite movie in the entire franchise, Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, and the build is as followed. Hex Haunted Grounds, Hex Undying, Unbound, and Superior Anatomy. Again, I did use a repeat perk for this build. Haunted Grounds was chosen to represent the graveyard at the beginning of this movie that Tommy goes to try and disintegrate Jason's body, but in the process, he accidentally resurrects him instead. Which leads into our next 3 perks, Unbound, Hex Undying, and Superior Anatomy. Jason has come back from the dead, and now with his newfound powers of immortality and also just insane levels of strength, he's able to unleash his rage upon Crystal Lake and kill anybody who crosses his path. There are 5 different add-ons that come directly from this movie. You have the Dirty Money, the Iridescent Boat Motor, the Deputy's Badge, the Imprinted Aluminum, as well as the Bloody Smile, so whatever add-on you want to choose, go right ahead. Next up we have Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, or Carrie vs. Jason basically. For the perks I chose Turn Back the Clocks, Mindbreaker, Enduring, and Fire Up. The reason I chose Turn Back the Clock and Mindbreaker is because Jason's foe in this movie, Tina, is a girl who has telekinesis on the level or maybe even greater than that of Carrie White from her movie. And let me tell you, Tina put Jason through hell in this movie, which leads into our next 2 perks, Enduring and Fire Up. Jason took a hell of a beating in this movie. He had a potted plant smack directly into his face, he had a building fall right on top of him, he had multiple nails go into his chest, he was electrocuted, drowned, and was finally blown up and burnt alive. For the add-ons, there's only really 2 you can choose from this movie, and that is the sleeping bag, which is probably one of the more notable kills in the Friday franchise, as well as the party noisemaker. For our next movie, we have Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, or what I would like to call Jason Takes a Cruise to Vancouver. For the build, we have Surge, Call of Brine, Hysteria, and No Way Out. Surge was chosen because at the beginning of this movie, a couple had anchored their boat at Crystal Lake right above Jason, who was laying on top of an electrical wire. The boat yanked the wire and a surge of electricity went into Jason's body, waking him from his watery nap. Call of Brine was chosen because for a majority of this movie, Jason was just chilling and killing on a boat. That's really about it. Which kind of plays into our next 2 perks, Hysteria and No Way Out. After Jason had killed a couple people on this boat, it started a mass hysteria and there's really nowhere for his victims to go. He basically has free reign to do whatever he wants until they eventually do get to New York. There are a couple different add-ons that come from this movie. You have the mirror shards, the sauna rock, and the toxic waste. You can probably also throw in the deputy's badge because there was a cop character in this movie, so if you want to, go right ahead. For our next movie, we have arguably the worst movie in the entire franchise, which ironically is the best build in this video, and that is Friday the 13th Part 9, Jason Goes to Hell, and the build is as followed: Corrupt Intervention, Hex Hive Mind, Hex Undying, and Eruption. The reason I chose Eruption is because at the very beginning of this movie, a military squad had lured Jason into the middle of an open field and dropped a bomb directly on his forehead, blowing him to smithereens, which leads into our next two perks, Hex Hive Mind and Hex Undying. For reasons I'll briefly get into in a couple of seconds, Jason can just simply never die. Instead, his soul can be passed on from person to person if he's able to get his hands on them and put his tongue or whatever into their mouth, and this gives him enough time to find a blood relative, put his soul into their body, and bring him back to his previous form. And for our final perk, we have Corrupt Intervention, which represents the Necronomicon. Yes, Jason Voorhees is a fucking deadite. Somehow he's a goddamn deadite. And the only way you can kill him is if you take one of his blood relatives and they take a Kandarian dagger and stab Jason in the heart. What the fuck? Once again, there's no add-ons that come directly from this movie. I chose the mirror shard, where if Jason is looking into a mirror, his true form is shown through the mirror even though he's in somebody else's body, and the deputy's badge because sometime in this movie, Jason actually takes over a cop's body, so yeah. Next up, we have one of the more fun movies in the franchise, Jason X. For our perks, we have No Way Out, Genetic Limits, Gearhead, and Ultimate Weapon. No Way Out was chosen for a similar reason to Part 8. They're on Negrendel, which is a spaceship, and they can't get out of it. They can't escape by any means. They're kind of just trapped in there with Jason until they find somewhere to go. Genetic Limits was chosen because in this movie, Jason actually dies, but it didn't last long because a bunch of nanonites had brought Jason back to life and turned him into Uber Jason, which leads into our next two perk, Gearhead and Ultimate Weapon. Ultimate Weapon because he is the ultimate version of Jason Voorhees that we have ever seen in the entire franchise, and Gearhead because he's just the bucket of bolts now. Beep boop bop bop. For the add-ons, I chose the sleeping bag kill because Jason does use a sleeping bag to kill somebody in this movie, as well as the imprinted aluminum because it reminds me of one of the best kills in the entire franchise, where Jason takes a girl's face, puts it in dry ice, and then smashes it on the laboratory counter. Next up, we have yet another fun movie in the franchise, and that is Freddy vs. Jason. For the perks, we have Help Wanted, Infectious Fright, Bamboozle, and Hex Retribution, and all these perks basically represent the entire plot of the film, starting off with Help Wanted, which represents the part where Freddy recruits Jason to come to Elm Street and kill as many people as he possibly can, to stir up as much fear as he possibly can, which leads into our next perk, Infectious Fright. The more fear and death that Jason causes, the more powerful Freddy will become, so he can terrorize Elm Street once again. And our final two perks, Bamboozle and Hex Retribution, play into the point where Jason figures out that Freddy had tricked him the entire time. He was not actually his mother, and he only used him to gain more power. This angers Jason, and thus ensues Freddy vs. Jason. For the add-ons, I chose the Deputy's Badge because there is a cop character who is a vital part to this movie, as well as the party noisemaker to represent the cornfield massacre that Jason had caused. And lastly, we have the remake for Friday the 13th, which arguably has one of the best Jasons in the entire franchise. For our perks, we have Territorial Imperative once again, Predator, Furtive Chase, and Tinkerer. Very much like Part 2, I chose Territorial Imperative because anybody who steps into Jason's land will meet their untimely demise. No exceptions. Well, unless you look like his mother, then a partial exception. I also chose Predator because Jason is a very experienced woodsman in this movie. He's doing a lot of things that puts the OG Jason to shame. Not, power-wise, but athleticism-wise. I also chose Furtive Chase because this is probably one of the stealthier Jasons that we've seen in the franchise. He's able to basically pop out of nowhere with no explanation whatsoever, which kind of leads into our next perk, Tinkerer. This Jason is a little too intelligent for his own good. He crafted an entire tunnel system that went under the grounds of Crystal Lake, so he can basically pop out wherever he wants to, whenever he wants to. And he's also able to operate various tools such as this spinning rock thing that he uses to sharpen his machete. For the add-ons, I chose the sleeping bag to represent the very beginning of the movie where Jason had taken somebody in a sleeping bag and tied them to a tree and hoisted them over a raging fire, roasting them alive. And for our final add-on, I have the dirty money to represent the douchebag billionaire kid from this movie, Travis. Anyways, that was every single lore build for every single movie in the Friday franchise, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you use any of the builds, especially that Part 9 build, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time.
That's my boy.